my Lord Crafty. Welsh miniature board gamer wishes to do another collaboration, and he may throw another brick through our window.
Brushes, wet palette, pro acrylic paints. Let's do this. Welcome to the Crafty Mini, and in this one we've got another collaboration with Welsh Miniature Board Gamer. Now with this, the original idea was I was going to just wind you up a little bit and say, right, we're going to paint a bust. Get him out of his comfort zone and get him to try different things. It's something that I've painted quite a lot of. I'm quite comfortable. However, in the process of chatting about it, I mentioned that I'm not the best at painting human skin and trying, and getting it to look realistic enough on a bust scale miniature. That's why I tend to do monsters or something with over exaggerated features and things. And then to my surprise, I get a human bust in the post. So cheers for that, Welsh. Appreciate that, you bugger, getting me back. But yeah, it's going to be a fun little project. We had a laugh doing this one. Obviously, go over to Welsh's channel to see his video on the bust that I sent him. We don't know what each other's looks like yet, so we're going to be releasing on the same week the actual videos, and we're going to get to see each other's for the first time. Really interested to see what he's done with it and how he's enjoyed the actual painting process. For me, this, as I say, although it being a human figurine and me not doing particularly well with human flesh, it was an absolute joy to paint. Really interesting. It's sort of like, it's got like an Aztec feel with the big bird skull and the feathers and some of the ornate bits of jewellery, but also it feels almost like a pirate. The shoulder pads remind me of Assassin's Creed, Black Flag and whatnot. So I decided first of all we're going to do the tunic in a nice red, because I want that sort of Old English sort of 19th century uniform. So wearing this red tunic, and then we're going to pick out all the other little bits of details and whatnot. So on with the video. Right, so after a burnt red base coat for the tunic, I'm then going in now and adding more of the bold red in there, just to build up that really bright red, and just picking out all the folds and the higher sort of areas, just to push that contrast a bit more and make that red punch out and be one of the main colours on the actual miniature. The detail on this print's really nice. There's lovely folds in the fabric and the skin and the hair and bits and whatnot, but we'll pick up all the details later. But you can see the vibrancy of this paint. Now when it does go on, it does come across really bright initially, but dries a little bit darker, so we'll build up this opacity with a couple of layers, and then basically each progressive layer just adding a bit more of that red to the burnt red base coat, and then just building it up. Just see, you still get a bit of the darker colours in all the recesses and the folds and things of the fabric, but where the main sort of light source would be hitting it from above, you get a bit more of that bright red. So at this point the tunic's pretty much done. I might push the contrast a bit more, but what I like to do at this point is just so I can get an idea of the composition of colours, is I'll start painting other areas even if I've not finished an area straight away. So with this, she's got some sort of robe or cloak, so I'll do a nice generic brown just to cover the back, because I want the main focus to obviously be the red tunic, that skull, which we're going to do something a bit different with, and obviously the facial features and the chest area where the flesh is, to draw the eye. So just base coating everything at the moment, and then we'll start building up all the details and the progressive layers of contrast. And here on the cloak, exactly as we did on the red coat, sort of tunic, just pushing the contrast on those browns, so picking it out with a really nice warm brown, which sort of marries with the red a bit. Again, looks quite close in colour initially as it's going on wet, but it does dry a lot more subtle in sort of tone, and again you just get a nice bit of variation. I'm not going to spend too much time on the cloak, because as I said, I want the front of the actual bust to be the main sort of focus, but it's just enough to give a bit of variation, a bit of contrast, and still having that base colour running through. And you can see here now that red's starting to punch a bit more, just because I'm getting other colours on the miniature, because everything around that red was all black from the base coat, that it's not really showing how vibrant it is. So this is why I start working on other little areas, and then I can always go back with the wet palette if I need to later. So the shoulder pads, just want to do a nice simple light leather, and then we'll have a bit of metallic trim because there's a bit of ornate detail on there. And again, I want to keep it quite simple and not go for any sort of colours that are too close to the red, and then the ideas that I've got for the headdress and the feathers, which you'll see later on in the video, just so that those two colours really stand out, because I want them to be the main part. Because the feathers, we could do some really nice sort of ornate high contrasting colours on there, and obviously the tunic, I want that to punch the most. Right, so on to the bit that I'm dreading, and this is the actual flesh tone itself. So what I tend to do now is I do very thin coats of tan flesh by Procreal, especially for a Caucasian skin tone. Build a couple of layers, build that opacity, and then we go in and highlight, and then I do a very thin glaze sort of wash, which you'll see later, just because I don't want this to be sort of really high Caucasian, you know, almost like a Scandinavian or us like here in England where there's no sun. I want it to feel like she's tan, because as I said, with the sort of composition of the model and the bits that are on there, I imagine that she's, let's say, a pirate captain or something, that she's obviously out in the sun all the time, so she's going to be a bit more tanned. So starting with this tan flesh as a base, just to give the skin a little bit more warmth as well. So you can see there the base sort of skin tone for the actual flesh, very tanned, going for more of like a slightly more South American look as for a base tone. It will brighten up slightly when we add the highlight layers, but again, building up on all the base coats now, just to make sure I've got the sort of colours properly sort of locked down, and so they're not interfering with each other too much. You'll notice the shoulder pads have got a bit of a gloss on, so they've just had a very quick sepia wash. That'll all be matted down with varnish later on as well, just to get in a few of those little recesses and just make it pop a bit more. And then I'm just going to now go in and do a nice dark brown for the actual hair, which again will highlight up as well later. And the idea at this point is I'm just trying to get as much of the colour on as I can base coat wise, and then actually what I do find is after I've finished the hair, you'll see in the next shot the red tunic's a little bit brighter in areas, and I've just pushed that highlight a little bit more with some scarlet by Vallejo, just to give it a bit more oomph and a bit more contrast. So with the actual hair itself, there's quite a bit of strong sort of sculpted detail in these, with very thick strands of hair. Now that's obviously not going to look too realistic, but so what I'm going to do is just keep it really simple, do a lighter brown. I've got the initial brown base coat and I've just mixed it in with a bit of that flesh tone, just so it's got a similar colour sort of background there. They're both using the same sort of palette. Just going to highlight this up a couple of times, keep it quite simple, because again I don't want to draw away from the skull and the feathers and what I've got planned there colour wise for later on in the paint job. Right, so at this point we're going to start pushing the skin tone a bit more. So I've already done a coat of the tan flesh mixed in with a little bit of warm ivory, just to brighten it up a little bit, and then I'm going in again now for a second highlight, just picking out a few key areas, keeping the paint really thin down with water, just so it flows a bit better. You get a bit of a smoother blend on there as well, and not leaving any sort of streak marks or anything from the brush, and just picking out the details and blending it in. So again, like with a lot of the paints, it goes on, it looks quite aggressive, looks really bright in comparison to the bits that I'm leaving the initial tone, but as it dries that bit darker, and I can go in and do 2, 3, 4 layers where needed, just to push that contrast a bit more and just pick out those key areas. So she's got a really nice bit on the model. Obviously you've got the curvature of the chest, but there's the two little I'm not sure what you call it, but it's just under the neck, those sort of two parts of the skeleton that pops through, and then obviously the facial features as well, the cheeks, the eyebrow, the nose, and the sort of the little part that goes down towards your actual mouth and chin as well. Just picking all those little bits out with highlights and these thin layers and building them up. So with this bit I wanted something to draw the eye to the face. Now normally that would be with some more aggressive sort of highlighting, again to push that contrast, but because of where the beak is for the helmet, it will naturally cast a shadow over the face, so I can't go too bright. So I came with the idea of what about some sort of like face paint. So I've got this nice blue, and I've just thinned it right down, and we're just going to draw on a box across the sort of tops of the cheeks, the bridge of the nose and the eyes itself to frame them. And then we can do the eyes really simple to give it a bit of more sort of ethereal look, so like as if this person's using magic or something. With anything like this where you're sort of freehanding a little bit, this one in particular is not too difficult. It's just a rectangle across the face. It's just make sure you follow the contours of the nose and make sure that you're keeping everything in shape, and just take your time with it, and patience is key with anything like this. At this point I've got pretty much all my base colours done, apart from we've not done the skull helmet yet and the feathers, because at this point in the painting I'm still figuring out what colour I want to go for. So it's a case now just going through picking out all those little metallic areas. I've kept all this really simple, so a really nice warm bronze on the sort of arm links that she's got, this bit of filigree around the shoulder pads, and then there's some ornate sort of earring type things on the sides of the skull. Just picking those out with the gold. When that fully dries, what I like to do with gold in particular is do Army Painter's light tone as a simple wash on there, and it just goes into the recesses enough just to make it brighten up, and then you can go in later on with a dry brush and just re-pick them out, all the little bits, just to push that contrast again and just make them pop a little bit more. The little swirls on the shoulder pads, I did plan on doing those in a metallic as well, but after I've put the trim on, I actually quite like the simple sort of yellowed, slightly lighter yellowy brown that I've got on there. Right, so when it comes to the headpiece, two things. I wanted a really nice contrasting colour, so because of everything on with the tunic and the browns and everything and the flesh, it's quite warm in sort of colour tone, so I decided to go for something a lot cooler. So we're starting off with a nice blue, just getting in there, getting all the recesses, and then we're going to build up some really nice contrasting green on this as well. And then I knew with the skull I didn't want to do anything, I didn't want it to look like bone, so we're going to do something different with that later on as well. But initially just getting this blue on, and then we're going to wet blend and dry brush the tips in different colours and different shades just to make them punch a bit more. And you can see, nice and simple. So I've added a bit of jade into the blue, and I'm just going to start working my way, not all the way down the feathers, but picking out the tips and adding more of the jade as we go further up to the actual the ends of the feathers themselves. So we're going to go from this really cool blue right into this really bright green. Green and reds really work well together, and again it just gives something a bit more visual interest compared to the rest of the miniature. Like this is some sort of weird ceremonial sort of helmet that she's wearing. But yeah, going through, picking out all the little areas, dry brushing, and just building up those layers of colour. So I went up to a slightly lighter sort of bluish green. I've then washed the feathers in dark blue shade. But I realised I wanted it to push a bit more, so now we're going in with actual green and just picking out the very tips of the feathers as if it belongs to some sort of exotic bird, maybe the bird that the skull comes from, whatever it might be in the sort of lore or backstory of this miniature. But I just found that picking these little bits out, it just adds again lots more visual interest. It's a really nice colour shift from the warmer tones of the body and the red of the tunic and stuff like that. And it just gives it a bit more vibrancy, which for something, as I said at the start of the video, she sort of looks like some sort of pirate captain, maybe in like an exotic sort of place of the world, that the colours would be more varied and a bit more bright and vibrant compared to what she'd get in day-to-day life. So just building this up, just again give it a bit more colour, and the green as a mix with the blue I think works really well actually. It punches it enough, it's almost like a sort of minty green. So you can see where it marries in with the blue a little bit, but it punches it enough to, again, make it completely different to everything else around it, and it's a nice visual piece to sort of draw your eye in. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't want to do a traditional bone for the actual skull part of this helmet, and I thought of, with that sort of Aztec look that she's got with some of the jewellery and the sort of the colour choice on the feathers and things, I was feeling like an Aztec sort of vibe, so I went for almost like an obsidian jade type skull, and all it is grey mixed in with a bit of that green that I've used on the tips of the feathers, and just adding progressively more and just picking out certain areas around the sort of the sockets of the eye, the harsher lines on the beak. So it's still quite dark at the end, but there's enough green in there that again it marries with the green in the feathers. But you've got that darker colour which goes with the hair and builds down into the rest of the miniature. And your guys will be the decider on the end, but I feel like it doesn't pull away from the face or the chest or that red of the tunic either, but it's enough variation that it does stand out on its own. And here she is done. So overall I'm quite happy with this. Still not 100% with the actual skin tone. That's something I'm still working on, trying to just make it not necessarily 100% real, but a bit more lifelike. I think there's enough variation in the shadow there, but it just needs a bit more. I think more with the highlights and things, especially on the face, the cheeks and the chin, just to push it a bit more. The overall sort of colour scheme I'm happy with. I think the red and the warmth of that red tunic, the warmer browns, and then into the cooler blues and greens of the feathers is a nice contrast. Skull's a bit different, but overall I really enjoyed painting this one. It was nice to be pushed a little bit more out of my comfort zone, as I tried to do with Welsh. So cheers Welsh for getting me on that one. But thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Any questions, comments, anything you want to know, please feel free to ask. And there'll be a link in the description for Welsh's channel. Go and watch his video on his bust and see how he did. But yeah, a lot of fun on this one, and hopefully more collaborations in the future. Cheers.